Yeah, sorry I couldn't be there. My daughter, my 2-year-old, got sick this week, and of course got me sick. So we decided to play it safe, and I'll stay home. So I hate giving presentations. I hate sitting through presentations when someone talks for like a whole hour at a PowerPoint and then does like 5 minutes of Q&A at the end. So I like to do about a 5-10 minute presentation, mainly just talking about my experience, what I've done, and then really open it up to Q&A, because that's where I feel people learn the most, when they're actually able to ask specific questions that might help them on their journey and relate to what they're looking to do with their lives. So if you don't know who I am, I'm a real estate investor. I had just under 100 units in the Chicago and Milwaukee markets. I'm also the managing broker of Second City Real Estate. So we are a full service brokerage company in Chicago, working specifically with investors. I'm also licensed and own my own firm in Wisconsin, but I don't practice up there. I just use it for my own, buy and sell stuff in the state of Wisconsin. I'm also the co-founder of the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit, which is a 2-day event, which may or may not occur in 2022. We'll see how things go with COVID. But it's a 2-day conference with a couple hundred investors. People fly in from all over the country, and it's a big networking event. It's actually the largest real estate investing event in the Midwest. So how did I start? I started with house hacking, like many people do, especially in the north side of Chicago. It's been about 10 years, which blows my mind. I used to always say, like, I used to be a normal person. I used to be a normal person. I had a regular job. I cared about sports and, regular things and pumpkin spice lattes at Starbucks. And then I got into real estate investing, and it completely flipped my entire life. And the last decade of my life has really been dedicated to building this business, fine tuning this business, and creating the lifestyle that I want. So I bought my first property in 2011. I still have that property today. It was a house hack. I did an FHA loan on it, lived in one unit, rented out the other ones. In hindsight, I was really, really stupid, because I did not even read an investing book or know anything about investing. I just looked at, oh, rent is this and my mortgage is this, so that means I profit this. I did not take into account, vacancy, repairs, CapEx, nothing. So I got really, really lucky, blind luck, that property worked out, and it's worked out really well for me. But would not recommend doing that for anyone else. The next year I bought a 3-unit investment property in Portage Park. I still have that today and self-manage that property. And then the next year we did you can call it a BRRRR strategy if you want. But it was let me go back. How do I do that? It was a rehab project. So we bought a house in North Center that had not been touched since the 70s, and did a full renovation on it. We did the first floor in the basement in 2013, and then we did the top floor in 2016, and then the exterior as well. So we pulled the cash out of that property. And then that's around the same time that I found BiggerPockets, which, if you don't know what BiggerPockets is, it is a real estate investing social network. And that's when I really got into, what to do with this money. I had, over 6 figures of cash. I didn't know what to do with it. And I started deep diving into, different markets, different strategies. It really exploded my options. I decided to invest in the Milwaukee market. That year, the next year, 2015, I bought 10 investment properties in Milwaukee using commercial loans. So while the properties were mainly residential assets, meaning 2 to 4 unit properties, I used commercial financing on those. And we did 5 loans at a time with US Bank. So I also have experience doing residential loans and commercial lending, or as far as a buyer's perspective. The next year I bought another 8 properties, and the first 18 properties that I had were completely self-managed from Milwaukee. I had built an in-house team of property managers and was planning on growing that, and then decided, once I brought on partners, which was in 2015, to outsource my property management, which has what I'm currently doing today in that market. So I had 3 partners. Each one was a separate partnership. So we were always, me and someone else at all times, never a third person involved in that relationship. We bought another 10 properties in 2015, and kept that portfolio there. 2017, I converted my North Center house into an Airbnb and kept that till 2020. And then it was 2018. I was actually traveling for a real estate conference, similar to my conference in Chicago, but this one was in Philly. And the first speaker of the day was an economist. And he was using, a bunch of big words I did not understand. So I was like writing down all these things like yield curve and bend, look out for this rate, like when the yield curve bends, I don't even know. And like just really like how does this impact my life, right? Because I know real estate. Um, I know my market, but I don't know the broader economic market of the United States. I don't know other markets besides real estate and how those impact real estate. So at the end of the event, they had an auction where you could, the different speakers were auctioning off different things. And this economist had auctioned off 3 hours of his time. So I bought his time. And part of that time with him was doing a deep dive of my portfolio. And he did his whole Excel sheet, like looked back. He asked me for all my records, all my cash flow analysis, everything, and spit out this, sheet to me of this is what your performance of your properties actually is. And it got me to sell a bunch of my properties in the next couple of years because I was looking at it from, again, I don't even understand still half the metrics that he put in there for me. But the one thing I did understand was that some of my properties were not performing like I had thought they were. When we looked back at the actual, 5 year data, and by selling my properties, I could get 10, 15 years of cash flow up front. So that's what I did. And I did my partner's portfolio as well. So over the next 2 years, we sold 14 properties of our 28 in Milwaukee. Um, and that's kind of where I'm at today with my current portfolios as far as the investing side of things. Um, we can get into this also. Like, I do not know what next steps are. People always ask me, like, what are you going to do next? I have no idea. I've had this money for 2 years. I have not made any moves. I have not bought anything since 2015. Um, so I don't know yet. Nothing is really exciting to me at this point. So I'm just holding on to the capital to figure that out. Um, Now, as far as the brokerage side, I've been licensed since 2004. It was actually, I started in real estate when I was 17. I started as an unlicensed assistant. My parents were getting divorced and selling their house. And the agent was over at our house one day and just got to talking to me. And she was like, "You are born to be a real estate agent. So you should come work for me." And I did. I worked for her for 4 years until I was old enough legally to get licensed. And, took all my courses when I was 20, got licensed the day I turned 21, and I quit within 9 months. I fucking hated it. It was really like, it was terrible. It was really, really hard for a 21-year-old to explain to people why they should trust her buying the largest purchase of their lives. So I had a really hard time gaining people's trust. And I also really hated it when people would talk about it doesn't feel like home. It doesn't feel like this. Like, I just don't know why, but I don't like it. Like, I didn't understand those emotions and how to communicate with people in that mindset, which is why I don't do the retail side of things now. So I left, said I wasn't even in there for a year. I left and went into corporate for almost a decade and did advertising sales and I started investing in 2011. It was really only supposed to be a side job. I had no intentions of leaving my career. I worked very hard to build it up. It was always going to be, this was a side hobby for me. And my father ended up passing away in 2012, and he had a very aggressive form of cancer in a very short time frame to live his life with us. And he ended up passing away literally the day before he was supposed to retire. And he worked for the post office for almost 30 years. He had always talked about retiring because they always offered early retirement, and was always like, well, after you get married or after your brother graduates and after this or after that, then I'm going to go do it. And when I do it, I'm going to go all these places where we're going to go do this and we're going to go do that. And then it fucking died. So it really messed with me emotionally, thinking like, wow, I have this job. I've been working 9 years to build my career. I'm in business development and management. I work, 70 hours a week. I travel all over the country, and I'm 28 years old. Like, I've got 30 plus years till I retire. And is this what my life is going to be? Like, I can't do 30 more years of this crap. So we looked at a couple of different options. Is that at that point we'd already owned our property for a year, and real estate investing seemed like the most logical path to give us the life that we want. Um, so from there, I started a meetup in 2013, also like from BiggerPockets as well. And that's how I started Second City Real Estate. So like I said, I've been licensed at this point for 10 years. I never used my license for other people. I didn't really like other people. I didn't like, taking them out and talking about feelings. But this guy came to my meetup and had asked me, kind of harassed me into being his real estate agent. He's like, well, I want to do exactly what you've done. So you should be able to teach me. I'm like, well, legally, I'm licensed to do this. I don't have a car. So you'll have to pick me up and take me to all the showings. But sure, as a favor, like I guess I could, show you how to house hack. And that's actually how the company started. Was then, the next meetup, someone else asked me, and then the next meetup, someone else asked me, and it just kind of grew from there. Um, that client said it's been since 2014, is still a good friend of mine. We've done about $8 million in business together. I just actually sold his last property in Humboldt Park for 1.2 million this summer, and now he's out of the Chicago market. Him and his family had moved out of state, but that's really how it started. Is that it wasn't intentional at all. But we have 12 agents now. All of us really have the same story, which is we all started investing, we all fell in love with it, and then we all went and got licensed. So my main partner is Charlie. He was actually a client of mine. I taught him how to house hack. He loved it so much, he came to work for me. One of our other agents, JR, used to be John Warren's client. I think he built up almost 20 units with John as his agent and then went and got licensed and came to work for us. So we all have that same mentality of we've kind of grown the business on our own and, fell in love with it and really wanted to help others do it. My experience, well, we're all over the Chicagoland market. We each work in areas that we personally invest, which makes it a little bit different. So we sometimes one client could work with 2 or 3 different agents, depending on what areas they're looking in. We have specialists that do 2 to 4 units, mixed use, and then commercial properties. My focus is the north side. I cover everything from Pilsen to Jefferson Park over to Evanston. And I mainly do 2 to 4 units, and about 95% of my business is house hacking. I said, I'm also the co-founder of the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit. It's a 2-day event at UIC. TBD this year with COVID going on and restrictions, but we do have dates set with the venue. We have speakers coming from all over the country. David Green was our big headliner last year, coming in from BiggerPockets. We have built-in networking, tailored breakouts, and it's more of an intermediate to advanced strategy sort of event. Now, this might, like, man, I'm exhausted telling you guys even what I do. Believe it or not, I actually have a life. I have a 2-year-old that's how I got sick, and I'm due with another baby in January. I work less than 30 hours a week, and I travel 8 to 10 weeks a year. With babies, don't travel very well. So this next year, we won't be traveling for 2 months, but we did take our daughter to Serbia for a month last year when she was 1. And then took off for Arizona. We took off all last winter and lived in Arizona for 3 months. It was great. So I've worked really hard on focusing my business, especially the last 4 years. So when I met my husband, I don't know, it was maybe like date number 3 or date number 4. He got mad at me for being on my phone. It was like a Tuesday afternoon or something like that. I had work to do. And he's like, if I took off time to work to spend with you, you should be spending time with me, not being on your phone. Like, well, my business is, I work from 7 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. Like, there's no office hours. And he said, well, if that's how you're going to live your life, I'm not going to be with you. So I had to learn and, obviously do it myself, how to reshape my business. Because he was right. I was still working my corporate hours. I was always available and always had something to do. So I really spent the next probably 1.5 years, 2 years reshaping and refocusing my business so that I could work less than 30 hours a week. So the first thing I did was I tracked my day. At the end of every day, I wrote down what I did and how long I did it. At the end of the week, I kind of tallied it up and was like, okay, I spent, 15 hours this week on marketing. I spent 10 hours this week on accounting. I spent 25 hours this week talking to clients. Like, where can I make this more efficient? So I learned a couple of things. I learned that I hate marketing. Well, I actually knew that I freaking hate it. So now I completely outsource all that. There's websites like Fiverr. You can hire VAs. And so every week for about 9 months, I would write down and review what I did that week, tally up how many hours I worked, and really wanted to focus on spending my time where I'm actually making money or spending time on things that I enjoy. So one of the things that I still do, which people give me shit about, is I still do my accounting. I absolutely love accounting. I'm a really weird dork when it comes to that kind of stuff. I did my taxes on all my properties. It's 200 pages up until I had a baby and was like, nope, I can't be doing this. Um, but so I do all of that myself because A, I like it. And B, it helps. I understand where I'm at with my business because I do my accounting every 2 weeks. So it's my time to kind of check in and see, hey, are things going the way that I thought they were? Where are we at with these projections? Where are we at with these sort of expenses? To really streamline that process as well. Um, that there's websites like Fiverr, VAs, you can definitely outsource a lot of your business. Um, I also cut out all in-person meetings, which is one of my favorite things now because people always want to grab coffee and pick your brain. And when you think about it, I know there's a couple of girls in the room, I'm at home in pajamas all day long. So for me to put on my makeup and I've got to put pants on, and like put on my, like actually get presentable. And then I've got to drive over to this coffee meeting to have, an hour coffee meeting and then drive back. Like all of that, I could have had 2, 3 meetings back to back on the phone in that same time period and not have to do any of that stuff. So I stopped taking in-person meetings unless it was absolutely necessary. But when it comes to like, people always offered it like, I'll buy you lunch. No, thank you. Oh, I'll take you out to coffee. No, thank you. If you want to talk, we can talk. Let's have an agenda. Let's go through it. Happy to do that over the phone. But as far as in person, like it's really not a useful use of my time. I'm able to then block off my time and do things back to back. So with my calls, I find that I get in the zone with people. I get in the zone talking. So when I set them up back to back, like I'm on a roll, like I'm ready to go. Like, I'm just spitting out words and everything's coming out like nicely when I put them all together at the same time. Um, I also don't take meetings without a reason. So this especially comes from like the LinkedIn's out there, like the random emails. You're like, hey, I can help your business save, 10%. No. And I always ask them, like, what do you do? If you can't tell me what you do, and why it's relevant to me within 2 minutes, then I don't take the meeting. I just don't think it's worth it because a lot of people they like to use a lot of big words to get you to take a meeting and make it feel like it's important when really they're trying to sell you some crap. Um, Focus is one of my other big things as well. So there's a book that was really life changing to me. It was a book called Getting Things Done. It's a task management organizational type book. I was actually too busy to read the book. So I bought the footnotes on Amazon, which was a 15-minute read, and it was great. But it really shaped my life. It's very to-do list oriented, um, very accomplishment oriented, very organized. So I have a notebook that I write everything down and I take it with me everywhere. I also work on time blocks and I only work when I feel like it. So I've been sick the last couple of days. Like I just took off work. I'm not going to waste my time trying to do something complex like accounting when I'm not feeling well. I learned that it takes me twice as long because I'm not focused on things. And I'll just push it off or set expectations with someone that like, hey, I'm going to need a few extra days on this because when I'm working, I'm in the zone and when I'm focused, I can really power through things and do great work. But when I'm really just not in the mood or I'm feeling off, my work ends up being sloppy and it takes me twice as long. So I just don't do it. I just take days off and everyone needs mental health days. Um, and also defining your time, setting boundaries and expectations. That comes down to like my office hours are I work from 9 to 6 Monday through Friday and 10 to 2 on Saturdays. Outside of those hours, I do not answer phone calls or emails unless it's an emergency. I'll check emails and phone calls, but I don't schedule phone calls. I don't schedule showings unless I actually like it's the only available option is to do it on a weeknight, which is pretty rare. None of that, or Charlie can do it as well. But those are my working hours. Outside of that, that's really my time with my family, and I try to stick to that as much as possible. So I found that in the beginning there was a couple people that didn't really respect boundaries, and I just dropped them as clients. and just explain to them, like, this is where I am. You need to respect that. And shockingly, most people do. It drives me, I can't believe, like, there's a lot of real estate agents who say, like, I'm available for you 24/7. No matter what you need, I will answer the call. And that's just not a business I want to be in. I don't want my whole life, to be you, no offense. But there's a lot of things that can actually wait. And learning to set those boundaries is it's given me a lot of more respect with my clients, I should say. So that is my spiel. Whoops, I'll edit out of here. What I know we were going to do different questions online and in person, right?
Yes, yeah. So Brie, we'll go ahead and alternate.
Sure.
If anybody has questions, I would encourage you guys to come up here, and we'll probably alternate 3 people to ask a question in person, and then 3 people to ask a question online, and we'll just go back and forth that way, if that works all right for you.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay, cool. I'll go ahead and start, actually. So I know you said that you had spent some time with an economist on how to better make decisions between whether or not you should continue holding your asset, or if it's a better time to just offload it up front. Do you feel that that insight that economist kind of gave you still applies today, or has anything changed since then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I review, said I actually just, every year now I review my portfolio. And I just was supposed to list a property this past weekend, but my PM didn't get back to me till like Friday morning. So I decided to wait to list it till next weekend. But yeah, I still use that same Excel and go through, like, I had a really large portfolio, like just under 100 units. So I use Buildium for accounting. I don't know if anyone uses Buildium. It's really I can pull reports and see all this fancy stuff. But I was always looking at reports. So even with my partners, every month I send them a detailed report. And then I also send them a recap of where we are year to date by month. But what I never did was I never really looked back at the whole picture of, like, hey, like, what's been going on the last 5 years? And when I went and did that, I would see, like, there were some properties where, like, hey, we had a really terrible year in 2017. Both tenants left. We had huge turnover costs, and then the roof was leaking, but like since then, we've been good. But I've had other properties where it was like, man, like every year it's something or another. And when I looked back at like one of the things I also looked at was how long my average tenancy was. So I also had some properties where, like, no one was staying past a year. Everyone was leaving after a year or sooner. Like, we were just having constant turnover, and it was costing us, like, when I looked back at the actual numbers, I'm like, man, I've been saying it's a bad year for 5-6 years now. So I should sell that. So yeah, I said I'd still analyze it. I'm selling 3 more this year because of it, because the numbers just haven't been up to par, and the property values have been increased. Even though I'm licensed in Wisconsin, I really believe in, if you can't do it well, you pay someone else to do it, right? I forgot one of the things on my list was I don't micromanage. If I need to tell you how to do your job, then you're not the right person to be working for me. So I hired another agent out there. Even though I'm licensed in Wisconsin, I don't pay enough attention to that market on a day-to-day basis to know that kind of stuff. So I said, I hired an agent to do a full CMA on all my properties. She walked every single one of my properties and gave me a value on them all. And then I re-updated my spreadsheet just a couple months ago.
All right, we'll wait. Anybody else in person?
Don't be shy, guys.
Don't be shy. All right. Well, if anybody, I'll have another question for you then. So when it came to the time where you transitioned to bringing on private capital for your investments, how did you go about making that transition? How did you make those connections with those other people? And I guess what steps did you kind of take to facilitate those relationships moving forward?
That's a really great question. And I have a really funny answer. So I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's at the summit, the first summit I think we did, but this came out on stage with that. So partnerships, especially with money, right? Raise your hand if you're married, right? Do you know the number one reason divorce is financial problems? So now imagine you're in a financial situation with someone, but you don't have sex with them. So it is like purely, like, it is not like emotional at all. Like, you don't love them, you're not going to forgive them. Like, It is 100% solely based on like financial decisions. So I would say partnerships are harder than marriages in that capacity. So it actually started, I said I have 3 partners. All 3 are engineers, which is really weird. It just so happened that all 3 happen to be engineers. But the first one had reached out to me on BiggerPockets. Just saw me, commenting one day about what I was doing, and said, "Hey, I'd like to work with you." And I told him like I need time. One of the reasons is I'm still building my portfolio. So I never wanted my partners to feel like I was taking the best properties and then giving them the leftovers. So I told them, here's my goal of what I want personally. Here's where I think that I'll be there this, next year. So how about we take the next year and get to know each other a little bit? And so what I would do is as I'd go in Milwaukee and look at properties myself, I'd send them an email recap. Hey, I saw these, 10 properties today. Here's the ones I liked. Here's the ones I didn't like. Here's why I didn't like them. As we brought on new properties, I'd email them like, hey, we had 2 tenants who moved out before we even got to give them a notice of property management change. Here's how we're handling it. So it really helped them get to know me. So 2 of my partners, I did that for about a year. And then the 3rd partner had approached me. I met him I was speaking at an event in San Francisco, and he moved a lot faster. He really wanted to, like, he was the first one I actually bought with and the last one that I'd met, because he was really excited about it. And it was the hardest partnership because we didn't have that whole year of solid foundation to work with. Because then, like, they've never really even been to Milwaukee. I think they each went once. So it was really, they were 100% relying on me to make financial decisions for them. They've never talked to our property manager. They've never even had a phone conversation with them or email because I handle everything. Like, that was our deal. So they really had to trust my ability, and I don't want to have to explain things to them. I also don't want to call them every single time that a water heater broke and say, hey, I need your approval for no, it fucking broke, you fix it. So like, that's how I run my business, and I needed them to be okay with it. So the last one into the relationship, and the first one that we bought with was the hardest because it took the most time because he had all these questions because we didn't go through that process. So the joke is I require a year courting period for partnerships, but I married my husband within 6 months, and we were engaged within 3 months of dating. So that was the big joke, that I didn't take the same due diligence with my marriage that I did with actual partners. But yeah, so they all ended up coming to me. I've had other people that have approached me about partnerships and had the same rules as far as like, we need time to get to know each other. And that ended up being great because it ended up not working out for a variety of reasons. There really has to be a strong personality fit. Even with the summit, also like John Kasman, I don't know if you know him. He just moved, but he was an investor in Chicago. He has a lot of large multifamily. He's my partner at the summit. We have extremely opposite skill sets, which works out so perfect for us. After like the first year of doing the event and like planning an event for a few hundred people, sucks. There's a ton of work. But we figured out quite quickly that the things that I'm good at, John's not the best at, and vice versa. So now it's a really easy event for us to plan because we just conquer and divide. So that's another way a partnership can work. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Just really, you have to be very comfortable with who you're working with and who you're getting into bed with, but not literally.
That's a great answer. And Brie, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but actually Windy City REI started as a result of the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit.
Oh, nice.
There was like what, 7 of us?
Yeah, 7 of us.
Yeah, there were 7 of us that attended that were consistently in the breakout sessions in between presentations.
Yeah.
And that meetup at the end of the weekend, we were like, hey, we should just trade information and keep in touch. And so we started up like this group chat over on WhatsApp. And before you knew it, it grew to like 30 people because people started inviting their friends who were also interested in investing in real estate. And we all met here exactly a year ago today. And this marks a year where we started with 30 people, and we are up to over 330 people in a single year. And it all started out because of that real estate networking summit. So thank you guys for providing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's the things that I always joke, like that's the thing I love about real estate investing. It's a lifestyle decision for us, right? It's not really a job. No one comes here and says like, oh, this is my 9 to 5. This is what I want to do for work. It extends well beyond that. So I always joke like, you can put 10 real estate investors who are total strangers in a room, lock them in there with a case of wine, and come out 12 hours later, and they'll still be talking. Seriously, like, we don't shut up. So it's great. And everyone's got a lot to connect on, not just business, but it's like a passion of ours, right? Do you have any more questions? Because I've got a couple on the on Skype as well.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right, we have one here.
Hey, Brie.
Hey,
Nice you mentioned that you're holding your capital steady. Do you think now is the time to wait, or do you still think there are deals in the north side of Chicago worth pursuing?
so the question was that I'm holding my capital, and do I think now is the time to wait, or are there deals still in the north side of Chicago? Depends on where you're at with your cycle, right? So people have different real estate cycles, and I found when I started, I was a very bouncy, energetic, 28-year-old, and I'd go up to Milwaukee to buy these properties. And one of the things I used to always do, and I still recommend doing, is after I bought a property, I'd always reach out to the seller and ask them why they're selling. Like, you've already sold it to me, so the deal's done. But like, I'm just curious and trying to learn from my own experience. Why were you selling? And one of the reasons people sold was like, they're just tired of it, right? They've been doing this for a while. They're tired of it. And whenever I asked how long it had been, the answer was always 10 years, which I thought was like, I'm like, oh, I'll never sell in 10 years. I'm gonna be doing this forever. I'm a buy and hold investor. And now I'm 10 years in and I totally get it. So the Chicago market, at least where I invest in the north side, I still self-manage my properties. It's quite easy. My tenants are awesome. I don't have a lot of problems. I don't deal with liars. I don't deal with that kind of stuff. But the Milwaukee market has absolutely burnt me out. It really sometimes makes you hate people. We go through a lot of, it's more of a C-class market. We have lots of instances of, I don't want to say fraud, but insincerity. I've lost lots of money because of that. I've had someone burn my garage down 10 days into owning the property. I've had a 4-unit burn down as well. A tenant was throwing a party and, started a fire and burnt our whole building down. It's like we've had a lot of things like that I'm just tired. I'm really just tired of hearing people's excuses. And when you go through like 10 years of that, it gets to be exhausting. So that's where I'm at with my cycle. I just don't have the energy. I said, I've got a 2-year-old, I'm pregnant. I am not looking to add on any more work at this point. I'm looking to kind of downsize things. So any investment that I do will be 100% passive. And that's where like the money's in the stock market right now. But if I were to do anything, it would likely be a syndication, which I'm not a huge fan of multi units. There was the first ever opportunity came up this spring that I've liked in the last 2 years, but it sold out before they even got to outside investors, or notes or something of that capacity, because that's kind of the path that I'm on in my journey right now. So as far as the north side, I've been an agent in the north side for 7 years. Prices have steadily increased for the last 7 years, really on the north side. People always they look at things again, they're looking at things from a short term, saying like, oh, well, prices were up this spring, 10% over last spring. Well, if you look at it over the last, 10 years, it's been on a pretty consistent upward trajectory. There's been like very minor ebbs and flows, but I have to readjust people's expectations every year. Even just in the last year, we had about 5 clients who had bought with us previously in like 2014, 2015, 2016, who are now buying like their second property. And it was one of the first things when I would send them like examples of what was, what the market was going on right now, was like, holy crap, this is not what I bought in 2 years ago. I was able to get like much better returns. And that was a thing they had to get over. I'm like, those days are gone, buddy. We cannot deliver those returns anymore. So this was our biggest year ever. We actually had our most profitable year ever with Second City Real Estate because of volume. We did so many transactions this year. The market was extremely hot. So there was plenty of opportunity. It's just a matter of defining what that opportunity is to you.
Thank you.
Great question, great answer. All right, we can start online stuff.
Yeah, so one of the questions was, at what point do you recommend getting property management software, just Buildium or even slightly lower quality software? Again, really depends, goes back to what your skill set is and what your time management is. So I had 26 units before I got any sort of software. I did it all in Excel. Looking back, I should have done it sooner because that was really, really time consuming for me. I would export everything from my Chase account every month, and then I would categorize and tag it into Excel. So software programs, like I said, I had Buildium originally when I had was doing my own in-house property management. Now that I use an outsourced property manager, I don't need Buildium. I just am really comfortable with it. I like the reporting with it, which is why I do it. But straight up from an accounting perspective, I really like Quicken Rental Property Manager. I would do the CD version or the desktop version, not the online version. I've never hated something more in my life than I've hated Quicken Online. It was terrible. It was a year of hell for me having to use that software. But the download version I really, really like. And that's what I use for my Chicago properties, as well as all my businesses and my personal accounting. I love it because you just, every 2 weeks I go in, I press a button, it loads everything from my Chase account. It remembers that Amazon is shopping. It remembers that Jewel is groceries. And I just go through and double check all my transactions. And I have about 800 transactions every 2 weeks that I go through and account for. And I do it in about 30 to 45 minutes. And I can do the same reporting in Quicken. And it's about $80 a year, I believe, for that software. I've also heard good things about Stessa. I've not used that yet. And I'm sure there's other free online versions, but it's really about your time, like what works with your time management, right? If it's, if you've got one property in 3 units or even 2 properties in 3 units, all that stuff, I find that some people get really overwhelmed with things being fancy, like having to have reporting. And people will spend, 50 hours designing a logo or what their business name is. It's like, do the business, don't worry about what it looks like. You can do the actual start the business before you have all those things in place. Like all my properties are my initials, my partner's initials. Those are all of our building names. Because that was as creative as I get with that kind of stuff. So don't worry about like having fancy graphs if you have a 3-unit property and like doing, financial projections, like what's going to be easy for you, right? The goal isn't for it to be all these bells and whistles. The goal is for it to minimize your time, right? And that you can use your time on things that actually make you money. So again, for everyone, it's different. That's a good question though. Another question, what numbers do you use for CapEx in your figures? How do you plan for higher property taxes after closing on a deal? Very good questions. And then there's a follow-up, but I'll get to these 2 first. So CapEx, repairs, vacancy, all that stuff is really, really market specific. So, North Side Chicago is more of an A-B type market. We plan for 3% CapEx, 5% repairs, 3% vacancy. That's based off of feedback we get from our own, what our own properties perform at, and feedback we get from clients. It's generally pretty conservative. I said in my 10 years of being a landlord in Chicago, my average vacancy is less than 0.5%. The only times I really have vacancies are when things are planned, like I'm redoing the kitchen or redoing the floors. It's very rare that it takes me more than, most of my actually places are rented out back to back. It's not that hard to rent something out in Chicago if it's priced appropriately and it's not in winter. But if I would have used those same metrics in Milwaukee, I would have been completely screwed. So Milwaukee is a C-type market, right? There's also C-type markets in the Chicagoland area. We use 10% repairs, 10% CapEx, 10% vacancy. And that sometimes still isn't enough. Because again, when you're dealing with C-class, you have to understand that, the rents per unit there are $600-700 per unit, right? Rents in Chicago are like $1,400-1,500 per unit. So when you're using it as a percentage, a roof in Chicago costs the same as a roof in Milwaukee. right? Roofs aren't cheaper up there. The buildings are the same size. Materials cost the same thing, and so does labor. So if you're not taking that into consideration and you're only using like a percentage wise, you need to adjust for the market that you're in. So 5% of $1,200 in a duplex in Milwaukee is a lot different than 5% on $300 or $3,000 on a duplex here in Chicago. So understand that point. There is somewhere on the BiggerPockets file section, I believe it's called a CapEx calculator. But someone went through and broke down, instead of using a percentage, they put in like the average cost of a furnace, how long a furnace lasts, the average cost of a roof, how long a roof lasts. And then they built out like a spreadsheet where you type in how many units you have and what your life expectancy is on your current properties. And it spits out an actual number, set amount of money you should be putting aside for CapEx every month instead of a percentage. So that's also a really good recommendation. For properties that we see that we walk with clients, it's one of our things, like anything that we see, whether it be like a furnace or a water heater, if it's near the end of its useful life, we plan on it with our upfront numbers. So we're trying to project anything that needs to be repaired in the next 5 years on your upfront cash, not in your CapEx. And then your CapEx would go for longer term things. So the first 5 years when we run our analysis, none of your CapEx budget should actually be going to fix anything because we've already accounted for that if we've done our jobs right. As far as property taxes, this is a great question. Most of you, I'm assuming, are in the Cook County area. So it's a very complex situation with property taxes. So we just had a reassessment year. Every 3 years, the city of Chicago reassesses, and across the board, everyone got assessment increases. Mine went up about 125 to 180%. And now everyone's freaking out again. But the thing is, we also had a reassessment. We had our assessed value decrease last year because of COVID, which was stupid. So people don't understand that there is a assessed value and there's a tax rate, right? Two different things. So when COVID happened, people were like, oh my God, I can't pay for my taxes. So the assessor is like, great, we're just gonna go in and lower everyone's assessed value. But the city has the same obligations, right? Even more financial obligations now with COVID. So every year the tax rate is the city's financial obligations divided by what the overall assessed value of all the properties in their district are. So Chicago always gets shit. We've gotten shit for like the last 5 years for being like one of the highest. I think we're the second highest tax rate in the country. And now with what they did with the assessor's office, I'm assuming are the highest. So what they probably did this year was went in and really reassessed everyone much higher. That way our tax rate will be lower when they actually take out the new tax rate next year. So that's what we're projecting. I'm not projecting a huge increase in taxes as far as, and if you look at historically the last 10 years, the tax rate per assessed value was pretty even keeled. It's gone up, it's gone down, but it's been pretty consistent over the last 10 years. So I think people are just freaking out a little bit over their assessed value increase is what happens. And then the tax rate goes down. So you don't end up paying like 180% of your tax bill. That being said, though, another thing to watch out for is when you buy a property. So I'm assuming a lot of you are looking to buy properties or might be looking to acquire properties. I never look at what the current taxes are because they're completely irrelevant to me. And so this happened, when did he buy? 2017 was a reassessment year. So Kevin must have bought in 2016. And I remember him calling me in 2 years later, being like, holy crap, my tax bill just went up crazy. Now I'm not going to cash flow. Like, what should I do? And I remember going up and pulling up from 2 years before the Excel that I had sent him as far as like what our offer, it was our offer calculator Excel, and looking at it and seeing like, actually your tax bill isn't even as high as I projected it to be because we planned for this kind of stuff. So for the last 2 years, you've been making like $300 more a month than I projected at a minimum. And now you'll be making $150 more a month than I projected. And then he was happy. So we always plan for an increase. I actually just redid my calculations a few months ago I went back and looked at people who bought before the last reassessment and how their property taxes changed. So the calculation that I use is that the assessed value will be increased to 80% of the purchase price. So whatever you're buying the property for, times that by 0.8, and then the tax rate is about 2%, and then times that by 2%, and that would be your projected conservative tax estimate. I can write that down as well, but that's what I use. We'll find out next year once that we get the new tax rates, but that's what I project it would be. And that I've never had a client that's actually been higher than what I project their taxes to be. But all that should be considered up front, absolutely, 100%. And then another question he had was, can I provide the names of specific contractors who are investor friendly? No, you can't. So it depends on the project size. If you're looking to redo a bathroom, there's going to be different contractors than if you're looking to do, a gut rehab of a 3-unit. The thing with investors, with contractors, is very much like investors. When they start out as newbies, they'll take those bathroom jobs. They'll do the weekend tile project. But as their business grows, those jobs are too small for them, and that's the problem that we're having right now in the rehab community, is that it's really, really hard to get anything done with small jobs. I just had a complete garage, the whole roof had to be torn off. I couldn't get anyone to come out and look at it. The response I got was, maybe in spring, when we're less busy, but right now, like, it's a $20,000 job. That's just really not worth our time to even come out and bid it. Or again, I had one guy tell me, like, if it's under 100 grand, we really just don't have time right now. So it depends on the project. It depends on the time. There's not like a list of contractors that you can just, call for any situation. It's really circumstantial. Again, it also depends on the person. I've got the guy who did my house. We did a $250,000 renovation. We completely gutted our house 2 years ago. I love my contractor. I do not give out his name unless I know I don't, because I respect him. He does a very good job. He did my house in 10 weeks, which was crazy, with full plans, permits, architectural drawings, because I was super pregnant and super crazy. And he knew I would cry if I wasn't in my house before the baby came. And he got it done. But I do not give out his name. Absolutely not. Unless I know the person and I know what the job is. So I pre-screen, and he's done a few jobs for me for clients and referrals over the years. But I completely pre-screen them before I ever give out his information, because he's that good. I don't want to tarnish him by overwhelming him with bathroom requests, right? Because it's beneath him. So I hope that didn't come off like an asshole, but that's the truth. It is. Where are the upcoming neighborhoods in Chicago that still have units priced less than 150? Nowhere. I've not seen a price. A condo maybe. I've not seen a multi under 500 in years, pretty much. That does not need a full renovation project. What makes them up and coming neighborhoods, and what numbers do you use for utilities when screening a property? So yeah, multis that I cover: Pilsen, Jefferson Park to Evanston. If you're looking for a property that needs cosmetic work, I would say a $500,000 budget is what you're looking at. If you're looking for something that's more move-in condition, you're around $650. If you're looking for something that's rehabbed, you're around $7-ish on the north side of Chicago. 150, you're probably pretty far out in the suburbs. I know that like Berwyn, Cicero, we also have a strong market there. They start around $350,000, $400,000 for properties there. Even the south side, we do a lot in Bronzeville, Woodlawn, Bridgeport, McKinley Park. Again, you're still looking about $350 for properties that we would consider to be in rental quality condition. Neighborhoods that are up and coming, there really hasn't been anything that's like new and up and coming in a while. I bought in Albany Park 10 years ago. That was considered up and coming back then. It's still considered up and coming. But look at, like, one of the things that attracted me to Albany Park was it's got 2 L stations. It's got a big hospital. It's got 2 universities. It's got a huge park. It has a lot of reasons why people would want to live there. At the time, no one lived in Albany Park, no one that I knew. And now I know a lot of people live in Albany Park. It's been 10 years. So, but again, like it was all those amenities that drew people to them. But take an area like not Westtown, Westridge. I've had, Westridge is like Western and Devonish, Peterson over there. I've probably taken over the years maybe 20 clients up to Westridge. None of them ever want to come back. The cap rates are higher, the prices are lower, the returns are higher than a lot of other neighborhoods. There's nothing wrong with Westridge. It's not unsafe. It's not an undesirable area, but there's nothing there. There's no transit. There's no universities. There's like no major hospitals. There's really no reason why people want to live there, and that's what ends up being the deterrent. So you got to think about, if you don't want to live there, why would your tenants want to live there, right? And what kind of tenants are you going to get that do live there? So like those are all things, like if there's no easy way to commute to work, who's your tenant going to be? So those are all things to definitely think about. And I always tell people when they're looking at properties, all the reasons you like or don't like a property are what tenants are going to think. So if the bedrooms are small, it's got to compensate with something else. Because if you've got rental quality kitchen, right, a kind of scary bathroom, and then you got small bedrooms and you're not walking distance from the L, or even like a bus ride to the L, like why do people want to live there? We started to see a lot more westward expansion along the Healy train tracks. So like Diversey West, Armitage West over there, like up to the Healy train tracks, like Pulaski. But again, there's nothing there. There's no transportation. There's not big parks. There's not big school systems. So like, while there's been a little bit of penetration in those areas, I don't see it being more long-term. Again, it's not like Avondale. It's not like Portage Park, Jefferson Park. Like those are all along the blue line. Again, anything along transportation is going to get overdeveloped first before people, have to take a 20-minute bus ride to get to the L to go to work. Did you want me to take more questions from online, or you want me to?
Go ahead and do
Oh.
Aaron's.
And then there's one more question on his. What numbers used for utilities when screening property? It totally depends. Depends on the property. So all properties in Chicago owner pays for water. We don't have properties here that are separately metered. On average, I expect about $500 per property per year for water. Our water bills are actually not high. They're extremely reasonable compared to other parts of the country. But everything else depends how it's metered. So if it's a legal 3-unit, it should have 3 gas. It should have 3 gas, 4 electric meters, which means owner pays common. Anything common electric is like $20-$30 a month. But if it's a legal 2 at the garden, there's probably 2 gas meters and 2 electric meters, which means owner pays for 2 of the units. So those you need to get the actual costs from the owners and then be able to build that into your projection. So there's not one, outside of water, there's no set formula that works for properties, but you can always ask the sellers or the seller's agent, and they should be able to provide that to you. I would not use projections on things. The only projection that we use before we have any sort of numbers is if there's a boiler. We plan for 4% in our initial calculations, but then once we actually see the property, we ask for actuals from the seller. What kind of returns are you seeing? You guys have some really good questions. You guys are getting deep into my personal life. What kind of returns are you seeing in your portfolio in Chicago versus Milwaukee? Again, this is a really awesome question. So that I bought the first 3 years where I bought in Chicago, the next 3 years I bought in Milwaukee. I ended up spending about the same amount of capital when I did my acquisitions. So as far as like cash out to buy these portfolios, it was quite equal, within like 5%. It was not planned that way. That just happened how it happened to be. Now, obviously, at the time, Chicago properties they're still much more expensive. But the time I was buying Milwaukee, like you could buy a duplex for like 55 grand. Now I'm selling them for like 110. So now you can't get duplexes under 100 in Milwaukee. But when I was buying, so we were buying, it was about maybe 25, 30 grand a unit up there. So one of the things, the rules on BiggerPockets, which I hate, the stupid rule, but I'll use it for example purposes, is the 1% rule or the 2% rule, right? You guys know what that is. It has nothing to do with how profitable properties are. People just use it blindly and they screw up. So when I was buying in Chicago, I was buying around the 1.5% rule. And when I was buying in Milwaukee, it was about the 3% rule, high twos, low threes. Now, again, that rule does not actually have any bearing on profitability because you have to take expenses into consideration. My Chicago properties run about 20, 25% expense ratios. My Milwaukee properties are about 50 to 60% expense ratios. So hugely different expenses. And again, it comes down to like rent per unit, what the percentages are, all those things. Roofs cost the same thing in both markets. It's just a higher percentage of my bill in Milwaukee. So Milwaukee was my cash flow play and Chicago was my appreciation play. That was always my game. I really liked having both portfolios because I felt like it gave me balance. And it felt on paper that Milwaukee, I used to always say, Milwaukee pays my monthly bills and Chicago builds my wealth accumulation. Well, when I hired that economist, he reviewed everything. I said he threw out all these different metrics and numbers and all this stuff. And when you threw in what my property values were worth these days, Chicago actually beat out Milwaukee quite significantly because the appreciation play. Now, again, I bought 2011 to 2013 in Chicago. You know, those property values, I've almost doubled all my property values. And I did in Milwaukee as well. But when you're buying for $300,000-$400,000 in Chicago versus 60, 75 in Milwaukee, it's a much bigger jump. So cash flow wise, Milwaukee takes the cake as far as my monthly cash flow returns. You know, on average, that when I was buying in Chicago, we were pretty solidly around a 9% cap rate. And that performance has been quite easily maintained and quite consistent over the last 10 years. My Milwaukee portfolio is an average of a 14% cap rate. So a very, very high cap rate. Then I was buying at a really good time. But when it came time to sell, I absolutely sold my Milwaukee properties first. They're, you know, what's that? Forget that 90s rap song, more money, more problems, right? That's exactly what Milwaukee is. So it burns you out. So, but yeah, there was the economist that pointed out to me that actually my Chicago portfolio was overall performance-wise year over year the most profitable of the two. So there's different ways to look at things. It's not just about cash flow monthly. You have to look at the whole picture of the portfolio.
That's a great answer. All right.
I said you guys are
anybody
going
else?
like really deep with these questions.
Yeah. Holly has a question.
All right, so it's kind of a self-serving question, but if you got drop shipped to another place in the country, how would you like assess the area you got dropped in to get a house hack?
That's a really good question. Because even if you're looking looking out of state, I like, you guys are all from Chicago, right? I love Chicago. It really bothers me when people use blanket statistics about Chicago and then like outsiders use it, you know, and like, oh, Chicago's a shithole. Like, oh, you guys are losing, you know, you guys have been losing population. I'm like, well, you have to look at like the actual like individual areas. Not everywhere is people, a lot of areas are actually gaining population. So understanding a new market is extremely difficult. If you just sit there from your computer and you're just looking at like, oh, what's the unemployment rate? Like that does not give you any real insight on the actual market. Because right, there's submarkets, just like Chicago. We've got tons of submarkets. Even when you look at specific zip codes, the data of our zip codes is so big, and our zip codes are so big that like, you know, you're not looking at like east of, like, let's just take North Center, for example, like the north side, you know, east of Western and west of Western are two very different price points. Those are the same zip code though, you know, so you can get screwed and lose a ton of money. And I've seen it happen a million times because people are just looking at like, oh, blanket statistics. So whenever I was looking at a new market, one thing I did was I set up Redfin alerts and just looked at them every day. And I tell even clients now that like when new clients come to us and say like, I'm looking to buy in 6 months, I'm starting my process. That's the first advice I give them. Like, listen, start up a search on Redfin, set up a daily email to get someone come to you And in the beginning, you're going to be like looking at houses and you're not really sure what you're looking at. You're just clicking through pictures and stuff. You're looking at rents. But I tell you, like after like a couple of weeks of doing it, you'll start to see things like a property will come up and you're like, oh, wow, that's priced really high. Or those rents are really low. Like you're internalizing that data. And that only will help you form your own opinion moving forward. So that's what I would do if I was looking at a new market to kind of assess it. Yes, you can look at, like you said, all the, public information, all that stuff. But start looking at the actual properties. I said it's not a waste of time. You're not going to see it at first, but you will see it. And then you'll start developing your own intuition. So I've got plenty of clients who come to me, 5-6 months later and say, you know what, like we're ready to go now. We did exactly what you told us to do. We've been looking every single day on Redfin. And like that really like helped us see what kind of numbers we can get. Like, and we're actually like, we're pretty ready to go. So it helps them just learn the market a lot easier.
All right, we have another question from Angela over here.
Hi, Brie.
Hi.
So kind of fangirling a little bit because my first meetup was actually at your meetup in 2017.
Yeah.
And Chris, actually my husband, he bring me there for the first time. So it was my first ever was with you. So I'm fangirling a little bit. So
I told you, like once you get in, you get in. It's like crack, real estate is, I swear.
So I guess this question is more for, I guess, the females in the group. The book I'm currently reading is The Only Woman in the Only Woman in the Room. The Only Woman in the Room by Ashley Wilson. And just kind of want to know what obstacles have you faced being in a more male dominated industry? And what advice would you have for us females?
I'm trying to think of how to eloquently answer this question. I don't think there's challenges because I don't care. I think I'm internally morally against like women only things. I think you're shooting yourself in the foot when you're only associating yourself with people that are like you, whether that's, what gender, what race you are, any of those things. I think you're asking to be like, I was doing a podcast once and they introduced me as like a successful female investor. And I was like, hold on, stop. Like we're taking this recording off. I'm a successful investor, regardless if I'm female or not. So you need to reword that. We need to start this whole intro over again. And they apologize. I'm like, but like, you're looking at me differently. Like you're thinking that I'm more accomplished in this silo because I'm a girl. Right. But when you compare me to other men, I'm less accomplished, which is fine. But don't say like I'm a top female only, like it's weird to me. So I don't see it as a difference or a challenge or, any adversaries really. People are going to like me. They're going to not like me. They're going to want to work with me. They're not going to want to work with me. I am who I am. I tell them that up front, and they can make their choices. But I don't like being set up as, a female. I feel like it separates me, and I'm asking to be looked at differently by saying those kind of things. So that's my opinion. I don't really have anything to say besides that. I don't know.
All right, anybody else want to ask a question? Yeah, go on.
So hi.
Oh,
Yeah, I actually don't have a question. I just want to say hi. You helped my partner and I buy a 2-flat, a house heck earlier this year on Ashland.
I know.
I just want to say, of course you do.
We haven't met though, because there was
exactly. So I was telling these because I wanted to meet you, but I just wanted to say thank you because coming out of state, you made everything so easy, and knowing nothing about Chicago, you were just such a wealth of information and made the process just so positive, and can't wait to reach out to buy the second one.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you guys made it here finally.
We did, yes, and we love it. So.
I really hope so. Challenging situation is that we were in Arizona for the winter, and they were moving from Washington D.C. and California, and had never lived in Chicago before. So it was a less than ideal situation. to try to like give them a tutorial about Chicago. And I think they didn't even think you guys flew in for the inspection only. It was, yeah, challenging, but I'm glad. I'm glad that worked out. And yeah, that's one of the challenges. I've got a client right now who is doing a 1031. So if you don't know what 1031 is, it's a way to do tax deferred on your investment properties. They live in New York. They sold a property in California and want to 1031 it to investment property in Chicago. They visited Chicago a couple times. They like the market. They don't know anything about the neighborhoods outside of like the downtown hotel district. So they were supposed to sell the property in California and then come to Chicago for like a week so that we could go out and take a look at properties. And the day before they were supposed to come out here, then they were going to Germany for a month. And they had to go to Germany early. And so then they were going to Germany for the first 30 of the 45 days that we had to do the 1031. And they just emailed me last week that they're staying the whole 45 days. So now I've got to find them something that I've never met them. They've not been in Chicago in 3 years. They know nothing about the market. And we've got like 38 days to identify an investment property over $1 million. So definitely very challenging. I'm very nervous for them from like, hopefully I don't screw it up. But like lots of videos, lots of video recordings of the areas, those kind of things. So we've done a few like video tours to try to help with those things. But yeah, I mean, you just got to roll with the punches sometimes. There's more questions online as well, if you want me to answer those.
Yeah, go for it.
What are your thoughts on Elgin, Aurora, Waukegan, or Joliet? I actually have no idea. I'm a big believer in knowing your market and sticking only to your market. And that's why our team is kind of set up the way that we are, is we don't operate outside of our areas of expertise. So I would like, if someone comes to me that even like a market, like I said, I live on the north side. Even if you wanted to buy in like Des Plaines, I would absolutely refer that out because I'm not experienced enough in that market to be able to tell you what to think or how to buy something in that market. So I actually know nothing of any of those markets except how to Google them on a map. So I can't offer that kind of advice. Sorry. Again, every market, those are all pretty big cities. Every market has submarkets. So again, you can't even say like, oh, well, Elgin is a good market because of this. Like, I'm sure there's good parts of Elgin and bad parts of Elgin. I'm sure there's A, B, and C class assets in Elgin. I'm sure there's different school districts, right, that like feed into different areas that are priced higher than others. Those are all things that like having an agent that knows that market well is what's important because that's going to affect who your tenants are, right? If you buy in a shitty school district that no one wants, who's your renter going to be? They're not going to want to rent in that school district. They want to rent to the other school district where the good kids go. Those are all things that like agents need to know and you need to know as an investor before you make your decisions. You really need to understand who you're going to be renting out to. And that's going to determine how many headaches you have. So how much minimum cash flow are you looking to make per door after CapEx, taxes, expenses, etc.? It really, again, that's like the 2% rule question. It's completely variable. I don't look at things per door because it depends, right? We're looking at the metric I like to use is cap rate. So cap rate is your net operating income divided by the purchase price of the property. So not including whether you pay cash or you do 100% financing, the cap rate does not change. But why that's important, not per door, is again like a property that was just renovated. So if you're buying a property that was just done with plans, permits, full renovation, quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, right? Your cost per door is going to be higher, but your rents are going to be higher. But if you're buying something that was updated in the 90s, and you've got to now, as I just saw a property this week, like the kitchen, the bathrooms are from the 90s, the furnaces, air conditioners from the 90s, the roof is from the 90s, like you're going to need to sink in about $180,000 to $200,000 in that property just to get it like to working condition. So the cost per door on the acquisition is going to be lower, right? but your rents are going to be lower because you're renting out rental quality units. But you're going to need to put a lot of capital into that property and then increase rents. Like that's the strategy that you're going for. It's a value add property. So like none of that takes into account costs per door. So I don't look at those numbers. I don't think they're very relevant. I would move to more of a cap rate. Cap rate will also let you compare properties of different values as well as different conditions. So one of the things we always look at is like, we can tell clients like, hey, on the north side of Chicago, you're looking at about a 6% cap rate. If you want a really nice area or you want a property that was just renovated, you're going to take you're going to be about 5.75. If you're looking for a property that, you can paint the cabinets, redo the countertops, but like a lot of the big ticket items are done, you want to sink maybe $20,000-$40,000 into the property, you're going to be about 6.25. But if you're looking at a property that needs a lot of work like that one, we want you to be like over 6.5, closer to 7, because the juice has to be worth the squeeze, right? If you're going to put 180 grand into a property to get it up and running, and you're going to make the same return as if you bought something that was, that you needed 20-30 grand for because it was a higher price point, then those are things you need to take into consideration. So understanding is the job and your capital investment going to be worth it, are all things that you need to consider on the upfront of everything, really. Oh, I gotta blow my nose. Sorry. I don't know. My kid licks things. She must have got sick or something. Sorry. But so yeah, those are things that we look at. It's more of a cash flow per dollar versus cash flow per door. And then north side properties are not cash flow currently. However, they're still being bought and people are speculating on appreciation when increases due to inflation. There are properties that cash flow on the north side. Absolutely. They're just not that easy to find. So it also depends on your loan program, right? Because cash flow with an FHA is a lot different than cash flow with a 20% down program. So the market the last 2 months has been terrible. It's been terrible. I don't know what's going on. We had a super strong spring. Our April, May, June was really out of control. It was not even funny. Said my husband was not very happy because I was working 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week. And just, it really wasn't, it was not fun work at that point. I've not been that busy since I can remember in the last, 8 years I've been doing this. So, but then our market, like June was reasonable, July was pretty reasonable, and then like August, September, it got really, really slow. So I don't know why, but like inventory has been terrible. There's not been a lot of properties cash flowing. It's like every day, 3 times a day, I get every single MLS listing that comes up. I said Pilsen to Jefferson Park to Evanston's my area. Every single day, I analyze every single property. I put them through like an initial cash flow calculator. And yeah, in spring, we're getting maybe, 15 options a week to consider. The last couple weeks, it's been 2 to 3 options per week. So it's been a slow inventory period for us, but there are properties that definitely cash flow. Again, also depends on your loan program. So cash flow is a subjective term to a lot of people. There's no one answer that makes sense to anyone. So if you're looking at it, if you're just a straight up investor, you're not looking to live there, right? Your metrics, your cash flow, your cash on cash return, cap rate are all gonna be different than someone that wants to live there, right? If they want a house they want to grow into. I've got clients who've been looking for a couple of months, they just had a baby, and then before, when they were pregnant, she would tell them like there was a 1-bedroom unit available. Like, we can make this work. I'm like, no, you cannot. You cannot have a baby and live in a 1-bedroom. I'm telling you right now. And now that they had a baby, I'm like, so we still in the 1-bedroom thing? And they're like, nope, not gonna happen. I'm like, I told you. Like, you guys would have been screwed if we would have bought that 1-bedroom unit, was only available for the next year, and had that baby. It's like, now, like, okay, now let's look at 3-bedroom, 2-bath duplex units, because they want something to grow into, right? But that's a personal desire. It's like they're more than willing to sacrifice on cash flow to have a bigger unit to grow their family into, right? Or to live in an area that's walking distance from the L. Like, those are all factors that come into consideration. So the way I like to explain it, especially for house hackers, is you got to imagine it's like a pie, whether it be apple pie, cherry pie, pumpkin pie, whatever. And you can cut that pie into 4 pieces. That's going to be price, condition, location, and cash flow. So if cash flow is the biggest piece of your pie, the other pieces have to be smaller. There's not more pie to create, right? And like everyone's pie is cut differently. It's really figuring out, where's your priorities and what's the balance of your priorities. There's no one answer. I said I can show the same property to 10 different clients and they will like it, hate it, want to offer, don't want to offer for 10 completely different reasons. And then they will have 10 completely different prices too in their head of what they would actually pay for it. Because again, people are willing to make different sacrifices for different amenities and different things. Are people just speculating on appreciation and rent increases? I don't consider rent appreciation or rent increases in any of my calculations with clients. Appreciation, I think you've got a much better chance of seeing that in Chicago. I know I've seen it personally with my own properties. I've seen it with this past spring was a really weird year. Anyone who bought in 2017 wanted to sell this past spring. And it wasn't even just our clients. It was like other properties I saw. Like we would go look with buyers, we go look at properties. I'm like, yeah, the sellers bought it a few years ago. And I'd ask them 2017. I'm like, how did you know? I'm like, it's the weirdest thing. I don't know what is going on with like the universe right now, but everyone who bought in 2017 wants to sell in 2021. I don't know what the deal is. It was only for a few months, but it was like everything we were seeing was 2017 purchases, even my clients that were selling. And like it was just, but they were seeing some pretty steady increases. I just sold a property for my client we bought in 2017. It was an off-market deal. I found him actually through a rehabber that I know. And we just sold it and he made $100,000. And the property, he bought it rehabbed and renovated. He, just maintained it. He didn't do anything to it. And that was a really nice appreciation play for him. Very good job for him. But rent increases, like even in the last 10 years, rent increases, I don't think have gone up enough to even consider that in calculations, to be perfectly honest. And people put like 3%, 5%, whatever. I just keep rents flat. And I don't use that in any sort of projections. I don't think that's a really big deterrent or not big enough to be an actual consideration factor when making a decision on buying a property or not. What are your thoughts on using wholesalers? Well, wholesalers are real estate agents. So it's illegal in the state of Illinois for a wholesaler to do anything more than one transaction per year unless they're licensed. Wholesalers in general, though, there's a few good ones. I'd say maybe 5%. The rest are not good. Not good because they read some book and think it's the no money, easy way to get into real estate investing. So it's sometimes, again, depending on the wholesaler, it's almost comical reading what they send over to you because their renovation budgets are ridiculously low and their ARVs are ridiculously high. So I'd be extremely cautious buying any deal just based on what the wholesaler says the numbers are, because it's never right. Now that's not to say there's not good wholesalers, because there's good wholesalers out there. They've been in the business for years. They're very good at what they do. They're just few and far between. They typically do not have mailing lists either. At that point of their business, they know who's serious. They know who's got cash. They know who can move quickly, right? And when a property comes up, they know who it's for. So the real, I don't want to say real, it's not the right word. The ones that have been established in the business forever don't typically use marketing lists, and they only do when all their other investors have passed on it. Then they'll push it out on a marketing list. But like one of the things like people always ask, double closing, that's still illegal in Illinois. You still need to be licensed to do any, so that's still profiting off of a transaction where you're not a principal. Anything more than 1 a year is still against the licensing laws and fines up to starting at $25,000. But yeah, so again, take it with a grain of salt. If you're buying something from a wholesaler, run your own numbers, do your own due diligence. I wouldn't trust numbers that any wholesaler gives without doing my own separate calculations.
Brie, I want to be conscientious of your time, but we have a few other people, maybe 3 other people here that have questions. Do you have time to ask? Thank you.
All right, I got one more. And it's shifting towards operations.
Yeah.
How do you help your teams?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. One more time.
How do you help your clients build their teams?
It's all depends on necessity, really. Everyone's got different objectives. So teams can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. Is your team your upfront acquisition, right? Your lender and your attorney, we have referrals for that kind of stuff. Your team could be property managers, again, referrals, but that depends again on what your needs are. There's a la carte property management, there's full service property management. Just because there's not one word that, one thing that fits all. Again, when it comes to repairs and stuff, is it you need a handyman job? Like you need a garbage disposal replaced or you need a roof replaced? Those are two very different things. So again, one of the things like most clients just call and ask, hey, we got this situation. What do you do? Or, who do you have or what kind of contacts can you refer us to? There's not one blanket size list of, hey, here's a list of people that can help out in every situation. Cause it's not like that. Like I mentioned before with contractors too, is it a small job or a big job? Are you replacing all the HVAC systems in the entire place? Or does one unit not have heat and you need a service call? Those are two different guys that can come out and do that kind of stuff. So it's just a matter of, we're just always available to everyone, clients or not, if they have any questions. Chances are one of us has been through that situation and has leads or contacts for them.
Yeah.
Hi, just want to ask a question. I've heard different opinions around this, but I want to see what you take on investors getting the license. Is it worth it, and why or why not?
It totally can be worth it. You said my whole team of agents were all investors who got their license. It just depends on how you're going to use it, right? So understand that the licensing school teaches you really nothing about real estate investing. It teaches you the laws, it teaches you the history of real estate, but it does not teach you how to actually be an agent, how to deal with clients, how to sell properties, how to deal with transactions, like none of that. So if it's just for a learning experience, I don't suggest it. I don't think you'll get really a benefit out of it. There's also costs associated with it. There's upfront licensing costs as well as annual membership costs. So hopefully there's no board members in here, but it's like a pyramid scheme, real estate associations. So everyone wants to be a real estate agent to get MLS access, right? That's what you want. But to get MLS access, you have to join the local board because only the local board can give you MLS access. And then to join the local board, you've got to be a member of the state board. And then you've also got to be a member of the national board. And they all have fees, right? So even though you don't want any of that stuff, you still got to do it and you got to pay it. So I'm a member of one national board, 2 state boards, and 3 local boards, which take a few $1,000s a year of fees because all I want was damn MLS access, right? So if you want MLS access, go to Redfin. Redfin and Realtor.com are the only public websites that have direct feeds to MLS because Redfin's an actual brokerage company. So everything that I see on my end, you'll see on Redfin.com. And when you run a search on the right-hand side, if you go to the bottom, you can actually download and export all that data as well. So that's what I used before I had MLS access, and it was great. So it depends on what your purposes are. Now, if you're looking to use it to do your own transactions, great. Also understand like the annual fees for like the regular board is about $2,000 a year. So are your commissions going to be at least $2,000 a year to cover those fees? And then your upfront licensing as well. And then every 2 years, you got to do continuing education, which is a couple $100. That's not really that big of a deal. But then you've got your brokerage fees as well. So every brokerage also charges you a fees. And those fees can range anywhere from a flat fee per month, which is like, I think Kale Realty is a really great brokerage for independent investors. I think they charge like a flat $50 a month and then like a small transaction fee. Versus if you want to join a big brokerage, you're looking at 30-40% of your commissions, even your own stuff. So, what's the cost benefit analysis? If you're doing one transaction a year, is it worth it? Not sure. if you've got friends, family, you might be doing 3, 4, 5 transactions a year, even just part-time, then yeah, it probably is worth it. So it just depends. Wait, real quick question, because this just came up in my mind. Similar. Is it worth being a real estate appraiser as a side hustle to get access to the MLS and learn to value property? I actually don't know much about the appraisal side of the business. It's funny that you asked that though, because my husband's looking to change careers, and that was something that I thought he could get into and do really well with. So I did call an appraiser that I know really well and kind of picked his brain a little bit about the business. It's a lot more hours to get into it than it is for a real estate agent. I also believe there's like more of an apprenticeship period that you have to go through as well to be able to do it. And it is very hard to build your business, he said, independently without contact with the bank. So you would essentially need to go work for someone who needs like an assistant or help to really grow your business, because growing it from scratch, your whole first year or two will be essentially courting banks and getting them to use you as an appraiser. That's how he said that the business kind of works. And then there's 3 different levels of appraisers as well. I didn't get a chance. I didn't know this till after I talked to him and went back and looked at it. But I need to find out like there's like, based on your experience, how many hours you've had of work and what your level of licensing education is, gives you a different level of appraisership. So I don't even know if like the first level you would get a lot of business, or you have to like wait to be an apprentice to go through the next level. But something to definitely consider, because he pulled up to an appraisal in a much nicer car than I had, and made a comment to me about just I've known him for years, so we've been whatever, but made a side comment about how much money he made, and I was like, damn, my husband should go do that. And that's how the conversation started. So it can be a very lucrative business, as much as agents, if not more. So, and you get to completely dictate your hours as well. Something to consider for sure. So I'm sorry, what was your question?
So a house hacking question.
Yeah.
So I have my last W-2 was back in 2017. I've been doing Uber since 2018. I stopped driving in March, and I just started back again in June. So I make pretty good money per week. But since I have that big gap in there, how do I go about do I have any recourse with getting any house hacking done in the near future?
Is your W-2 now the same sort of job type as your W-2 before?
I'm sorry.
Or is the W-2 job now the same sort of business as it was before, or is it completely new?
No, I have no W-2 now. My last W-2 was in 2017.
So you said you were driving, but you put in 20. I'm sorry, it was really hard to hear you. Your W-2 to 2017, then you were doing
strictly Uber 18. Strictly Uber, only Uber.
Then yeah, you should be able to, as long as you have 2 full years of tax returns. So that's one of the things. I was actually just having this conversation today with someone who is a pharmacist and wants to become he's got his real estate license because he's got a few properties under his belt and wants to come join our brokerage team. And one of the things I had to tell him was, you need to understand that you'd have to have 2 full years of tax returns with W-2 income to be able to qualify that for rent or for income purposes. So as long as you have 2 full years of tax returns, they're going to use the average of your last 2 years of your income. So that's another thing that investors and 1099 people need to understand is, while we have the ability to write things off, it sounds great. You're like, oh, I can depreciate this and I can write off that. If it shows as negative income on your taxes, then the bank is going to take that out of your W-2 income, right? So if you're writing off, if you're trying to pay as little taxes as possible and write off as much as possible on your taxes, that's going to affect your income for bank loan purposes. So yeah, as long as you have 2 years, they'll use it, but it depends on the amount.
And see, that's my issue, because I haven't, I stopped March of last year. I just started back June of this year. So I'm not in a position to do anything since I have that big gap in my income. Okay.
Yeah. Again, like that could affect you for another couple of years. because they're gonna go like when you're 1099, they go solely off your tax returns.
Appreciate it.
All right, Bree. So I just want to be very conscious of the time, but thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today. We're a ton of value provided to all of our participants, both virtually and in person. So really appreciate your time. What's
Thank
the
you
best
so
way
much.
what is the best way you would say somebody can get a hold of you?
I'm on BiggerPockets almost every single day. Or you can just email me, chicagobrie@gmail.com.
Okay, fantastic. Bree, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there. I didn't want to get everyone sick though.
No worries, no worries. You made it here still virtually, so thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot.